Pemimpin Reform UK Nigel Farage mengungkap rencana pemerintahannya untuk mengerahkan Angkatan Laut Kerajaan Inggris atau Royal Navy guna menghentikan kapal-kapal migran yang melintasi Selat Inggris dari Prancis. Berbicara di London, Farage menilai kebijakan suaka Uni Eropa sebelumnya telah menyebabkan peningkatan kedatangan migran ke Inggris. Ia menyebut pemerintahan yang dipimpinnya akan mengembalikan kapal migran ke Prancis sebagai bagian dari upaya memperketat pengawasan perbatasan. Juru bicara Reform UK bidang dalam negeri, Zia Yusuf, juga menyatakan Inggris membutuhkan langkah tegas untuk menangani imigrasi ilegal. Namun, rencana tersebut menuai sorotan karena belum mendapat tanggapan dari pemerintah Prancis terkait kemungkinan kapal migran dikembalikan oleh otoritas Inggris. Isu migrasi kembali menjadi perhatian Eropa setelah gelombang besar migran di Ceuta, wilayah Spanyol di Afrika Utara, yang menyebabkan puluhan orang dilaporkan.
I was there in the European Parliament at the time. The Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker saw this as an opportunity for the first time to launch the common EU refugee and asylum policy. What it meant was that if anybody set foot on EU soil, they would be allowed to stay. I warned against it, I railed against it, but of course to no avail. And that stupidity was compounded, of course, by Angela Merkel saying, anyone that wants to come, we can manage, we can accommodate you. And it's had pretty dire consequences. One only has to think about what's happened to the city of Malmo, previously a fairly peaceful port, now one of the murder and rape hotspots in the whole of Europe. And in many ways, in the run-up to the referendum in 2016, the reason that I launched that breaking point poster was to say Europe has given itself massive problems for decades to come, but we can avoid this by leaving the European Union and getting back control of our borders. Sadly, governments after 2016 were in power but never really believed in the Brexit project, and even when Brexit finally came, there was no change to our status with the ECHR. And that was why 5 years ago, single-handedly, I went out repeatedly into the English Channel, videoing, YouTubing the growing number of boats crossing the English Channel, and I made the argument that you might just as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover, everyone welcome, because the chances of deportation were then, and are today, so incredibly slim. I said I believed if it wasn't stopped that it would lead, literally, in numerical terms, to an invasion of our country. Well, under the Conservatives, 130,000 people arrived via that route. The vast majority, young males of fighting age, who willfully discard their iPhones and their passports into the English Channel at the 12-mile line. And I've been out and I've filmed that too. I have to say, the fact we've given the French over £1 billion and that their navy still escort boats from a couple of hundred yards off the beach all the way across to a 12-mile line, that is something that needs to stop. And whatever videos or pictures you see of the French police slashing boats, the fact is that the traffickers have become even smarter. And in the last 3 weeks, we've seen several launches coming from as far west as Normandy. All the while, the pull factor of coming to the UK, being able to stay, all the while that pull factor is still there. It doesn't matter how much money we give the French, the boats will continue to come. And of course, many of those that have come are people who in some cases wish us harm or do us harm. As we speak, there is a man, charming chap, Kalashnikov tattooed on his face, currently in prison in this country, who's threatened repeatedly to kill me, and no doubt that promise remains when he's out in a few months' time. But there isn't a single week that goes by where we don't see stories of serious crimes, sexual assaults, rapes, and we know for a fact that many that are now coming come with the deliberate attempt of joining criminal gangs in Britain as soon as they come. But it is worse than that. I first started voicing this again 5 years ago to say this would become, or could become, then, a national security emergency. And that is exactly what it is. Repeatedly, I've asked the Prime Minister, well, the last Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, in PMQs, whether he would declare a national security emergency. So Operation Fortress will be a combined military operation. It will save lives. It will help the French in fulfilling their job of stopping the boats, and it will save a huge amount of money. We are very confident that our policy of securely picking people up and safely taking them back to France, we are entirely confident that that falls within other conventions of international law, and you'll see that argued clearly in this document. And when you think about it, what is the Royal Navy for? If the Royal Navy is not there to protect this country from invasion, then frankly, I can't see what its purpose is.
A nation that cannot control its borders is not a sovereign nation, and Britain is being invaded. For decades, Tory and Labour governments promised to get tough on illegal immigration, and yet year after year after year, tens of thousands of fighting-age males have arrived on our beaches. In fact, the total number of illegal immigrants in this country now stands at well over 1 million. The United Kingdom is being invaded. Over 200,000 people have landed illegally on our shores over 8 years. Now that's a staggering figure, and it exceeds the total number of Allied troops who stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. Those who arrive are unvetted, mainly military-aged men from Iran, Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. Now, they have been rewarded for this by a political class that puts them up in hotels at the British taxpayers' expense, given free meals, free healthcare, free TV licenses, and even free trips to the safari park and to the cinema. First, we will create an integrated surveillance command, unifying military and intelligence surveillance to make ours the most surveilled maritime border in the world. Second, any vessel attempting to cross illegally will be intercepted by our armed forces, who will return them back to France. Not a single illegal migrant trying to reach our shores will make it to Britain. To those with no right to enter Britain, our border will be impenetrable. Once the world realizes that crossing the Channel illegally leads only to being intercepted by our Royal Marines and returned to France, the incentive structure breaks. These economic migrants will stop paying smugglers, and the boats will stop coming. Now, I know many in the media are clamouring to ask, what happens if the French don't agree and Royal Marines attempt to land people on a beach? Let me be crystal clear. A reform government will show unflinching resolve to ensure that people who set out from France to break into Britain go back to France. That is our policy, not a future negotiating position with the French government. What France gets to decide is how that happens. Now look, we would far rather disembark people in port, walk people down a gangway, and hand them to the French authorities properly. That is more dignified, and it is what we will negotiate for. And keep in mind, the official position of the French government is that they do not want these boats leaving their shores in the first place.
Download MetroTV Extend sekarang.